Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Alok De. I'm Associate Professor at Arjigor Medical College, and I'm in obstetrics specialty. Uh, my respected chairpersons and my august audience, sir, everybody is here. It's a really great honor to present in front of you. So when we're actually discussing about the preventing cerebral palsy, I don't know how much we have progressed on that aspect. To say about prevention, we need to tell what are the risk factors. Because we are not saying what are the causes of cerebral palsy, because we don't know that. There is so much studies around the world cannot actually prove beyond doubt that cause and relationship between any pathology and cerebral palsy. So we basically rely on what are the risk factors. So far we have discriminated. So by now we know the definition of cerebral palsy. That is a chronic static neuromuscular disability characterized by aberrant control of movement or posture appearing early in the life, but not a result of recognized progressive disorders. That's how we actually exclude all other neurodegenerative changes which are progressive in life. Let us know about something about the onset of the insult. That means to the brain, when it actually happens. That means the timing of the onset of the pathogenesis. It basically can happen in fetal life, can happen in neonatal life, not even sparing the age up to 3 or 4 years. But mostly the affection actually happens in fetal life. That is almost 85 to 90% cases. And what about the prevalence? There are a lot of controversy regarding the prevalence of cerebral palsy. But the latest data actually from Nielsen 20th edition, they actually increased the prevalence to 3.6 per thousand live births. And almost 7 to 10,000 new cases are being added to the cerebral palsy population. So we know the burden now. And as we are speaking earlier, that male baby are more prone to female baby. That is the ratio we see 1.4:1. And even the ethnic differences are also seen. Like black babies are more prone to their counterpart in white races. So here is the lesion. Typically lesion is bound or rather restricted to brain only. But similar pattern can be seen in the early childhood, like somebody having muscular dystrophies, some peripheral neuropathy, like meningomyelocele. They also can represent the same way, but they are not cerebral palsy. So now again we actually going back to epidemiology and etiology. So we have a definition from Center for Disease Control from USA. They're saying it's a very simplified divisions rather. That is, one is congenital cerebral palsy and other is acquired cerebral palsy. So congenital cerebral palsy, the injury actually happened before birth or during birth. So now we see the prevalence, the percentage, they are contributing to the cerebral palsy pool. That is almost 85% to 90%. Again, sorry to say, the specific cause is not in many of the cases. So what are the risk factors so far been identified? Two factors, obstetric factors, are really important to know. One is prematurity, another is low birth weight. So we have the statistics in front of you. You just see here, in case of low birth weight, if a baby is born less than 1 kg of weight only, see the percentage, 15% can actually develop cerebral palsy in later life. And as the weight is actually increasing, like when you see the 1.5 to 2.5 kg, this prevalence actually incidence is going down to 0.6 per 100, rather 6 in 1,000 live births. The similar story is also for prematurity. If you see the 20 to 27 week, we know that we have a very complex, advanced neonatal care unit available. So 20 to 27 weeker babies are now being survived. So what actually happening in the later life? You see, the 15% of the cases may develop cerebral palsy. But as the gestational maturity is advancing, the number is going down. Now we see that after 37 weeks, it's only 1.1 to 1.6 per 1,000 cases. I'm not going through all the statistics as such, it's really boring. And so, in total, prematurity and low birth weight, they actually contributing 50% of cerebral palsy population. So imagine the burden of it. Now, we cannot forget about the multiple births. You see here, twins are 5 to 8 times more prone to develop cerebral palsy. And if you say about triplets, its number is actually increasing in geometric fashion. You see, for 20 to 47 times, they are at risk of developing cerebral palsy in case of triplets. And not to forget about assisted reproductive technique, they have 1.6 times increased risk of, even if the baby is born in a singleton, as a singleton baby. And we are talking about infections earlier. So what are the infections can contribute to cerebral palsy? Earlier identified infections are mostly viral infections, and some protozoal infections are also there. Torch infection we know earlier, which actually affects fetal brain during its course in fetal conditions. And what we have identified these nowadays, even the infections of placental and fetal membranes, like chorioamnionitis, can also contribute to cerebral palsy. It can be like bacterial infection, it can be fungal infection, or including viral infections. And maternal pelvic infection also contribute to that part. Here we have the study where chorioamnionitis is being blamed for 12% of spastic CP born at term, and it's almost 2 times in case of preterm born baby. Why not jaundice and connectors been contributed into that part? And some antenatal conditions of the mother also we cannot forget, like mother having uncontrolled hypertension, diabetes, thyroid disorders, mental retardation, and also convulsive disorders on epileptic, anti-epileptic therapy. They are also are prone to, these baby born to these ladies can be suffering from cerebral palsy. And some sentinel birth events. Actually, we know the obstetrician, we are very much medico-legally responsible, and sometimes been actually punished for that at sometimes. This event is called birth asphyxia or perinatal asphyxia. These birth events actually contribute to the cerebral palsy, but this is not the major reason of cerebral palsy. I'll come later on, that how much percentage of perinatal asphyxia contributing to cerebral palsy, I will discuss. You see the sentinel birth events like placental abruption, uterine rupture, and some problems like cord prolapse actually can contribute to CP. And of course, the congenital birth defects in CNS also contribute to that part. So the rest of the population is called acquired CP. They only merely contribute 10 to 50% of the cerebral palsy population, and the lesion actually starts after 28 days of the birth. And we know the infection we know the etiology here rather distinctly. One is infection, that is meningitis. One is head injury, and sometimes problem with the blood flow to the brain, like CVA, or because of bleeding disorders, or somebody having heart defects or sickle cell conditions. So they are contributing to acquired CP. So we are now trying to figure out types of cerebral palsy related to the risk factors, because few types of cerebral palsy related to one sets of causes and others in different way. Like if I take the example of spastic hemiplegia, you see the 70 to 90% are congenital, 10 to 30% having acquired, and here the lesion is basically unilateral, mostly affecting the middle cerebral artery zone mostly on the left sides. May have other abnormalities like porencephaly. But premature infants may also be affected, but it's mostly common in term baby. And when we consider spastic diplegia, mostly the premature infants are being affected by this. And the major pathology we see intracerebral hemorrhage, parenchymal hemorrhage, intraventricular hemorrhage, or periventricular leukomalacia. Dyskinetic or extrapyramidal type is mostly related to hyperbilirubinemia, but the premature baby can be affected with normal bilirubin level. So here the lesion is basically around basal ganglia or thalamus, or both. The spastic quadriplegia, they actually contribute about 50% of prenatal conditions because of prenatal condition, and 30% are perinatal conditions, and 20% is postnatal in origin. Here actually the cavity is being formed in communication with lateral ventricle, in the gray matter and the white matter as well. So sometimes hydrocephalus may develop. Here the perinatal asphyxia is actually contributing this type of spastic quadriplegia. The full-term infants may have other cerebral hypoperfusion problem, but preterm infants may also can have this quadriplegic type of CP. So then we actually now going to what can happen during intrapartum phase. So we are considering the birth asphyxia. You know, once you say the baby is suffering from neonatal side, somebody saying the baby is suffering from birth asphyxia, then it's really a problem for gynecologist. Historically, people used to say that if meconium stainings are there, non-reassuring fetal heart rate, low Apgar score, or neonatal encephalopathy can, if it has all happen, can contribute to the generation of cerebral palsy. But nowadays, the studies are clearly shown, it's, if I consider the fetal heart rate as such, it's 99% cases is a false positive incidence. And here we see the only 1/4 of the infants with neonatal encephalopathy can be related directly to the asphyxia. And of course, the intrapartum hypoxia itself solely uncommonly causes neonatal encephalopathy or CP. So a little relief for us as well. So when we actually correlating with the Apgar score with the cerebral palsy, we are very good. If even at the 0 to 3, at 5 minutes, only 0.3 to 1% babies can have CP. But when you are considering this Apgar score is not improving at 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you see the releasing baby in 50 to 60% cases. And other survivors, where survivors is 30 to 57% survivors even can develop cerebral palsy. Now a footnote, it's written in red, 75% of the children with CP had normal Apgar score at birth. So some contrary findings are there. So one template actually been published by different community, including obstetrician, neonatologist, neuroimaging groups, and medical legal groups. They identified in 2007 there should be some criteria where we can identify acute hypoxic damage to the baby. So we have list of it. I'm not reading out everything for you. It can be boring for you. Essential criteria as such, they found there should be a history of metabolic acidosis, but documented. Of course, the presentation will be documented, like in the form of fetal blood sampling, arterial chondrosynthesis, or early neonatal blood, which will show the pH below 7, and of course, including base deficit more than 12 millimole per liter. And another essential criteria being put forward, there will be early onset of severe or moderate encephalopathy is also acceptable, but not for premature baby. It's for more than 34 weeks of gestation. And the type of cerebral palsy, if it is like a spastic quadriplegic or dyskinetic type, can be related to the hypoxia. And some relative or secondary criteria has been put forward, but they collectively can actually lead to or finger towards the cerebral palsy. Like sentinel events I have said, like uterine rupture or sudden hypoxia, sudden hypovolemia during or before labor, some sudden deterioration in FHR in CTG monitoring, which was previously normal, some Apgar score like severe scoring like deteriorating scoring even at more than 5 minutes, and of course early evidence of multisystem or some evidence of cerebral abnormalities. So little bit we know about these risk factors, and then how can you prevent? This is a really good real questions, and here we see we starting with the sorry note. In many cases, the cause or causes of congenital CP are not fully known. So that means what? We currently can do little to prevent it. Suppose I take a example of like genetics. If it is related to genetics, it's not preventable. But some general advice can be advisable during or before pregnancy or afterwards to prevent the occurrence of CP. So what are the general advice is actually for, is a leaflet for patients. Like be healthy as possible before pregnancies. Like optimizing the maternal health condition, reducing blood pressure, correcting blood sugar, or somebody having, if having thyroid condition, optimizing it is important. And some vaccinations you cannot ignore if it is not given earlier, like chickenpox or rubella vaccine. You know the rubella is definitely identified with CP. So these vaccinations should be done beforehand, before getting pregnant. So this is one form of preconceptional counseling we advise. And this advice, the third one is advice not to the patient, is as basically ART center people. They should come up with some guidelines that the more and more singleton pregnancy comes out, should be come out from ART measurements. So singleton pregnancy actually can prevent some populations or reduce some population of cerebral palsy. What we can do during pregnancy is usual, like having a healthy pregnancy is the approach, get early and regular prenatal care, hygiene to prevent infections like maternal genital infections, and of course, somebody having viral infections should be isolated from the mother as such, so that baby can actually won't affected with cerebral palsy conditions. And should be social workers should be with the mother whenever she is having this trouble like fever or infections, get treated as soon as possible. And what about the flu shot? Madam was asking about the common viral infections like influenza virus. So what will you do? This influenza virus is also implicated in actually the pathogenesis of cerebral palsy. So why not these people get vaccinated with the flu vaccines? They will prevent this pregnant woman as well from suffering, and of course their unborn baby. And it's documented these shots are not teratogenic or any harmful effects having on the pregnancy or the baby. And regarding the Rh incompatibility and other blood type incompatibility, we have 100% protection even in our country, so we are not worried about that part. But even then, we have the program like anti-D prophylaxis during pregnancy times, and of course, we routinely use anti-D administration after delivery. So thereby you can prevent that incompatibility. But other general blood type like ABO incompatibility is still a major concern for neonatologists. And what we have said earlier, the prevention of preterm delivery or low birth weight would have reduced the CP population by 50%. But unfortunately, again, we cannot stop, most of the cases, we cannot stop the preterm labor. So researches are going on how to safeguard this preterm baby or premature baby from having a neurological damage. That means a neuroprotection. So one compound actually being identified can be beneficial like magnesium sulfate. But controversy still exists. Current studies is not recommending magnesium sulfate. And other conditions like if baby is put in hypothermic condition, maybe it can be beneficial for their brain to develop later on. And a few other research products are being advocated, studies are going on. I don't know how beneficial it will be after third trial, like in the form of allopurinol, erythropoietin injections, they are studying on it. So what prevention we can take in intrapartum phase? We are really concerned about this, but as I said, to prevent sentinel events like uterine rupture, cord prolapse, which won't, if I do so, it won't lead to HIE as such. And not to forget about chorioamnitis, there should be guidelines, the guidelines available all over the world from Gynecological and Obstetrical Society. So according to the protocol, the chorioamnitis should be managed. And if I say something about continuous electronic fetal monitoring, that is CTG monitoring, it's the study actually shown, the contrary to our belief, that it actually prevents stillbirth, but not the development of cerebral palsy. And the same story is true for the cesarean section as well, that by cesarean section, maybe we are escaping, obstetrician are escaping from litigation of baby having neonatal encephalopathy afterwards, but we cannot prevent CP. And for the other parts, the 10 to 15% people who suffers from acquired CP, usual precautions we can take, where the baby should be taken to OL baby care clinic for usual regular checkup. Neonatologists are working to prevent kernicterus and infections like HIV infection and pneumococcal vaccines. And there will be standard protocol to prevent injuries. Like we have a list of it, like while driving on the car or on the bike, playgrounds would be a soft one, shock-proof, shock-absorbing rather. And of course, we cannot batter our baby, which actually can lead to CP. So what is in conclusion? Really not enthusiastic, I said, so I really confess. The pathology and pathogenesis of CP not fully understood, so the risk factors. Preterm birth and prematurity are major contributor of CP, but unfortunately, no definite steps are available to stop this from occurring. So prevention is elusive. Anyway, researches are going on. Maybe, hopefully, in next 2 decades, some groundbreaking measures might be available for our mother and kids. Thank you very much.
Is there any question from the audience? Yeah, Dr. Rajiv Dal.
Yeah, you said 75% of the cerebral palsy patients have a normal Apgar score at birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what is the converse? How many babies with abnormal Apgar score go on to develop CP?
Yeah, that's what I have, the slide I'm showing. I'm just going back. Oh, sorry. Here it is. You see, at 0 to 3 at 5 minutes, 0.3 to 1% babies might have CP. 0 to 3 at 10 minutes, 10% babies can suffer from CP, but rate drops if 5% to 5% if the score improves at 15 and 20. And, but the sorry figure is for 15 and 20 minutes. If it's still less than 3, we have the mortality rate of 50 to 60%, and the survivor like 36 to 57% will suffer from CP.
So there should be a better scoring system rather than
Of course, there is no doubt about it. Yeah.
there might be some cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
So which person? How?
It's that's the question, everybody is asking. Who will, if you take the on individual basis, whether this baby will suffer from CP?
Preterm baby is all
Okay.
right.
Yeah. But for
full-term-
normal, that's why I have said that the 75% children with CP, they had normal APGAR score. No intranatal or prenatal condition which will identify this baby is going to suffer from CP. So we are unable to identify the risk factor as such in these patients. So we cannot just predict, at this moment, we cannot just predict who will suffer from CP, ma'am. सारे क्वेश्चन আছে ওখানে।
Yes?
Can I just ask a
Of
question?
course,
please?
ma'am.
As you have just said, there's a possibility if it is genetically linked. But can't we have any genetic screening before the birth of the baby?
Yeah, of course. This is a part of preconceptional counseling.
But
If the
does-
family or pedigree having any genetic conditions which is being actually transmitted through offspring, we have to identify the gene, and some gene therapy is available at this moment as well. So there is
Okay,
some
does-
remedy
does-
for
does
that
it
list.
help in the long run?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Thank
of
you,
course.
doctor. Thank
Of
you.
course.
Dr. Subhash Chakraborty.
My question is that
হ্যাঁ স্যার বলুন।
in last two lectures it was decided regarding the viral infection during pregnancy. Is there any record that recently we are very much alarming figure and one part, other part of the globe regarding Zika virus,
Zika virus.
which
yeah.
causes the microcephaly?
yeah.
Whether as such microcephaly has got any effect on the cerebral palsy, number one.
So, possibly
And number two, Zika virus, which can directly cause this microcephaly, has got any history or any records that it has caused this cerebral palsy?
স্যার এটা যেটা আমাকে বলতেই হবে যে জিকা ভাইরাস বিন আইডেন্টিফাইড ভেরি লেটলি in last 6 months or something the Zika virus actually come up in the media and the medical literature. So we didn't follow this baby born out of it and followed for 7 years because we know the standard guidelines is to actually follow the baby for 7 years to exclude cerebral palsy. So of course, the microcephaly is the condition at this moment we identified with Zika virus. This is maternal fetal transmission is there. But the cases of cerebral palsy is not identified yet. But it's my apprehension, the microcephaly may be related with cerebral palsy. The literature will tell later on.
I think
I have
that-
no answer
You have
at
no
this
idea.
moment. No answer at this moment.
And the same thing, I think also Ebola virus also. At the present moment,
Yeah.
regarding Ebola, you cannot say anything also.
Yeah. So Ebola still, there is no as such some neurological damage been identified so far with Ebola, which is more predominant in Zika virus. Almost 70 to 80% mother affected with Zika virus actually developing microcephaly, which is not preventable at all. So maybe in latter part, this baby will suffer from cerebral palsy, nobody knows.
And genetic factor is contribute is very less. I think 2% is only
Yeah.
on genetic factor of
Genital factor.
entire cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
So by controlling this genetic factor
Yeah, if
treatment,
we do preconceptional counseling and if we analyze those offspring family members, maybe 2%, maybe we can get rid of that 2%. Yeah.
only. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, sir.
Do you think stem cell therapy or oxygen therapy has any role in the treatment procedure?
No idea. I can't comment on that because I have no idea. Sorry, sir.
Excuse me, will we diagnose radiologically by ultrasound preterm baby or full-term baby any defect in the brain that is which causes afterwards cerebral palsy?
Yeah, so it's a part of radiologist, I think. Anyway, so I'll answer to some extent. The somebody, the sonologist who is doing level 2 or level 3 ultrasound, they can pick up some brain lesions which are congenital, not related to any infections or something, may pick up that group, and that group may lead to cerebral palsy. It's possible.
And also you said that maternal infection can cause
Yeah,
cerebral palsy.
that's what I'm next
Which
part
type
I'm
of-
saying.
which type of
There's
infection?
some infections, like in the form of torch infections, you know, the toxoplasma there, some rubella infections are there, herpes simplex infections are there, cytomegalovirus are there. They have definitive pathological changes documented all over the world, and of course, our population, third world country. If we do some serological test, in more 50% of mother showing some antibody rise in any form under the group of herpes simplex or under against cytomegalovirus. So this virus infection is so prevalent in our third world country. Okay, so these infections may lead to cerebral palsy. There is no doubt about it. Okay, but there is no such study that how much this infection actually contributing to how much population of cerebral palsy.
I am also gynecologist and radiologist.
Okay, sir.
And
Okay,
that's
ma'am.
why I-
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there any other question?
Okay, thank you then.
Then we
Thank
would
you
like to
very much.
conclude, and I would like to request Ashwati Nadda to proceed for the next one.
Needless to mention, it's becoming more and more interesting as you have been proceeding with this session.